Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and Trans4mers doesn't just have Dinobots hopping aboard its Autobot cast list. On the vehicular end, we've got Crosshairs, who comes packaged, half transformed, and looking utterly terrible. Whatever your thoughts are about the end result, I can assure you he looks better than he does on the shelf in robot mode. Oh, and for the G1 Crosshairs fans out there, he has, like, zero resemblance. As for you pre-Age of Extinction Movieverse Crosshairs fans, who are you? Crosshairs turns into a Chevrolet Corvette Stingray C7. At least that's what some internet searches assure me. It's a good-looking automobile mode, albeit with a bit more upward bulge than its source material. The green and black color scheme is striking, though Crosshair's decorative black pattern only happens on one side of the car. Definitely, he may look like he's lacking paint, but he's actually covered in it. It's just that a lot of it is to make the clear plastic parts look like cast plastic. Remember the days of how Prid Knockout gave the illusion of looking unpainted for the same reason? Well, the days of pushing up my glasses and saying, actually, it is painted, are back, baby. How embarrassing. But hey, Crosshairs has some sick silver rims, and thanks to the large amount of paint, he's got this gloss finish that feels just a little bit premium, you know, if you ignore all the front and rear bumper stuff that's sculpted but not picked out in color. While it's not as egregious as it looked in his packaging, Crosshairs does have a lot of shell cracking going on to get into his robot mode. His arms are generally car-integrated, though, and for a guy wearing so many panels, transformation is straightforward and not a guessing game of puzzle play. With the feet and legs mostly formed up before we even began, the last major step is the connection of the car part coat's rubber flaps. These things are kinda tricky. If you get the twist and push motions down, it's not too bad, but if things don't line up right for you, it can be a pain, and a somewhat scary one, considering how much bending the little rubber nubs go through. But eventually, you'll arrive at Crosshair's robot mode. Ever since the first teaser footage of Age of Extinction, I've been fascinated by the dual Tech-9 wielding green Autobot wearing most of his alt mode as a trench coat, or maybe a duster coat? Either way, that's the loudest feature of Crosshairs when he's a robot, and it dictates a huge amount of why anything is anywhere on his body. One cool thing is that the coat tail can be adjusted to swing back, using a terrifying clicking joint, and look like it's swooshing in the wind. All three pieces of the coat have copious sculpted detail on their undersides that is begging for paint, or at least repro labels treatment. In fact, the whole figure is begging for that. Since almost the entire car shell is painted clear plastic, that's left almost nothing for Crosshair's robot bits. Most everything has been colored in the barest minimum degree, though that does mean he's got some light piping in his eyes. Rather dull and ineffective light piping. It's a bummer because he has a lot of sculpted detail on his body and some goggles on his head that are thirsty for the blue and red 3D glasses lenses seen on his box art. Anyway, those rubber flaps, they're supposed to complete the sleeveless coat look, connecting to the faux lapels on Crosshair's collar. Unfortunately, since they tend to look a little bulbous, they look more like a weird frontal parachute to me. Maybe they are. He's a paratrooper according to his bio. Regardless, they're a valiant attempt to do something that needs paintwork or sticker work to bolster the visual package. I almost wonder if they'd have looked better simply being done in a green rubber rather than a black rubber. They also help conceal some of Crosshair's weaponry. He's got a pistol under either side of his coat, as well as a silenced Tech-9 style gun that can be plugged into his leg. These weapons are alright, though I look at the two smaller guns and find myself frowning. Crosshairs had twin Tech-9s in the teaser, and damn it, I will not rest until the toy does as well. If this is the kind of prick that'll double parachute into battle in broad daylight, wearing a bright green car parts trench coat with silencers on his dual SMGs, then I will have dual silenced SMGs, mark my words. Amidst the cans of worms on Crosshairs here, one of the small cans inside one of those cans of worms would be his neck joint, because he can only really look left and right about that far. And that's it. He can't really look up or down. He can just kind of like wobble on the joint because his head sculpt just gets in the way of everything. His shoulders look like they're going to get in the way of everything, but they only kind of get in the way of everything because the entire assembly is on a stem that jacks right into his chest. I think it's kind of like a big ball socket connection because this whole assembly can move around in a sort of conical diameter or radius if you're going to be geometric, and then this shoulder pad up here kind of swivels around on its own, and then this shoulder here can kind of move around a little bit on its own. So what that means is you can get about this much of an outward swing on the arm, and I thought you weren't really going to get any kind of outward swing on this arm outside of maybe like this. So there's a lot going on here, but I'm feeling a lot better about it than I did when I saw this guy in package. He also has a bicep swivel, and he's got really nice double-jointed elbows, and they are only, like, tangentially there for the transformation. These feel like they're way more here entirely, so you can have him take his silly Silence Tech 9 and do the thing where he's all like, "Hey, baby, you see my gun?" He has no waist joint. I feel like down here, somewhere really low down on the pelvis, a waist joint could have happened, so I'm pretty disappointed that there is not one. He does have universal hip joints, and also these two sides of his coat can get out of the way. They can swivel out like that. And it's a pretty good hip joint. It does what it needs to do. There's a thigh swivel at the very bottom of the thigh, right above the knee cap. There is a knee bend that does that. It's a decent amount of bendination. His foot can do this, and then for some reason, this chunk of the car can come with it about that far, and I honestly couldn't tell you why other than aesthetics. So, whatevs. Also, his wrist can swivel, so he can turn his gun sideways and do that thing that people who don't know how to shoot guns do, where they shoot guns sideways. So, you know, keep it real, Crosshairs. So let's talk about this coat that makes up so much of what Crosshairs is to, well, me. The outer parts are like these swishes, and they're able to go like that, so they're kind of like wings, I guess. Ooh. And that's all, unfortunately, because the whole coat assembly is attached to this backpack. Oh, let's orient this into swoosh position. That is permanently scary to do. I'm waiting for the day that it just cracks in half. We'll see, I guess, once this guy comes out in mass release. So the whole backpack can kind of hinge out on this kind of... I mean, with all this stuff here, it's kind of mushy, but it can do that. And in doing that, it sort of takes the coat bits with it, except that since they, you know, they angle around and... I don't know. The way that this coat moves is like 50% of what I want. The back part can flap out, and the side parts can flap to the sides, but I wish the side parts could also individually move like this, because that's what's preventing a smooth, proper, billowing in the wind kind of look. And it's all a little bit exacerbated by the attempt of these rubber things to look like they're moving with the line of the coat up to the collar there. And it is, as I mentioned before, it's a tad bulbous. It's not quite working for me. Now, what makes this work for me without any kind of repro labels or modification is when you take those rubber bits and you just stuff them back here where they were in vehicle mode. Because now they fill out the dead space back here actually really nicely. And in my opinion, they make this look more like a thing that's flowing in the wind. Perhaps it is more of a cape in this formation. I don't know. But for now, I kind of like how this looks a little bit better. I can see more of Crosshairs. I still get the coat aesthetic, and it doesn't have that weird bulge. So you're going to have to finagle with the coat once you get this figure yourself if you're deciding to pick him up. Because it can do some cool stuff, but it is also just not quite able to budget in the magic I was hoping for. I'm thinking maybe some independent company can at some point create like new coat bits, which I suppose would also be new sides of the car, to work with this, you know, decent coat back. Anyway, that's Crosshair's posability. Like the rest of the figure, there are times when I think it's super cool and times when I go, oh man, you're almost super cool. Almost. I keep going back and forth on Crosshairs. I love the base visual design of the character, and the way the toy acts upon it. My opinion seesaws on that every few hours. Sometimes it looks great for its price point, other times it feels like the engineering elements just didn't quite line up. Every time I wish the toy had ditched the clear plastic to shuffle more paint apps to the robot mode. I can deal with the half-detailed car mode, but the fact that so much paint was blown on covering clear parts that allow for windows, which only accomplish the illusion-shattering display of folded-up robot bits inside the alt mode, is an equation that feels like it defeated itself before it could be completed. Coloration aside, Crosshairs is a decently posable figure in robot mode, and an entirely serviceable car in vehicle mode. It's not spot on to the real world thing, but I don't know, it looks like a car to me. And it does a way better job at storing all the accessories than Dinobot Slug's alt mode. And hey, I love that they really tried to pull off the coat. It's one of the most creative shell transformation ideas I've seen in a while, and it traces all the way back to the on-screen design. I think it can be pulled off on the toy with some visual tweaking, and I am hardcore curious to see what some repro labels augmentation could do to gussy it up. Hell, I'd even love to see an independent group make some kind of replacement piece for the rubber flaps at least. Overall, though, you need to be into the idea of the car parts coat to even begin to get into this figure. It does nothing extra to sell the concept, and if you think a robot in a trench coat is dumb, you're probably going to think this toy is pretty dumb too. But you know what? The toy probably thinks you're dumb. It's weird how that goes two ways. It's weird how toys think things. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I just hope Crosshairs can have another shot at figurehood. This one's alright, but I want one that can do his ridiculous twin silence Tech 9 reverse double parachute dive, like a proper Call of Duty kid's power fantasy gone robo-crazy.